Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and now we will be going to a live transmission for a press conference between US President Donald Trump and French President Emmanuel Macron.
Nous avons tenu à faire cette conférence de presse ensemble. Je laisserai ensuite le président Trump, la première dame et l'ensemble de son staff ici dans cette salle pour qu'il puisse poursuivre par sa propre conférence de presse et répondre à la presse américaine et internationale sur tous les autres sujets. Et je rendrai compte de manière plus détaillée un peu plus tard de l'ensemble des points sur lesquels nous avons réussi à trouver un accord et les avancer sur de nombreux sujets, de la biodiversité en passant par le numérique et les détails. Mais nous tenions à avoir cette conférence de presse ensemble parce que l'année prochaine, ce sont les États-Unis d'Amérique qui auront à accueillir le G7 et ce passage de témoin de présidence à présidence est un point auquel nous tenions. Et puis je dois vous dire, parce que nous avons, durant ces 2 jours et demi, fait beaucoup de choses ensemble. On a sans doute plusieurs points communs, mais l'un tout particulièrement avec le président Trump. Nous n'aimons pas perdre notre temps et nous aimons avoir des résultats, des accords et mettre tout le monde dans une dynamique positive. Et donc, dès l'arrivée du président Trump, à travers le déjeuner en tête-à-tête que nous avons eu, qui, je dois dire, a été sans doute une des discussions les plus productives et les plus riches que nous ayons eues ensemble, nous sommes mis dans une dynamique qui a permis véritablement de faire avancer nombre de dossiers. Et je veux vraiment vous remercier, Monsieur le Président, pour cet esprit et l'efficacité. Juste quelques mots sur des points qui étaient très attendus, en particulier pour nos 2 pays. Sur l'Iran. Sur l'Iran, le président Trump et moi-même avons eu des échanges toutes ces dernières semaines, et particulièrement ces 2 derniers jours. Nous sommes d'accord pour dire que l'Iran doit respecter ses obligations nucléaires, doit avoir un comportement responsable dans le Golfe et travailler avec nous. Et au fond, on a 2 choses très claires auxquelles nous tenons. L'Iran ne doit jamais avoir l'arme nucléaire et cette situation ne doit pas menacer la stabilité de la région. La France a pris plusieurs initiatives et j'en ai toujours tenu informer le président Trump pour essayer de trouver des moyens techniques de bouger. Parce que les décisions américaines des derniers mois ont mis beaucoup de pression et doivent nous mettre en situation d'améliorer justement la sécurité régionale de la région. Par cette coordination, nous avons pris une initiative hier qui a été de faire revenir le ministre des Affaires étrangères iranien. Il y a eu de nombreux échanges avec les ministres français qui ont permis justement de dessiner un chemin. Rien n'est fait. Les choses sont encore éminemment fragiles. Mais il y a des discussions qui se sont ainsi amorcées sur le plan technique avec véritablement des avancées. Et puis ce matin, le président Rouhani a clairement dit qu'il était prêt à rencontrer tout responsable politique si c'est dans l'intérêt de son pays. Ce que j'ai dit au ministre Zarif et ce que j'ai dit par téléphone au président Rouhani, c'est que s'il acceptait une rencontre avec le président Trump, ma conviction est qu'un accord peut être trouvé. On en connaît les termes, les objectifs, mais il faut maintenant se mettre autour de la table et y arriver. Et donc je souhaite que dans les prochaines semaines, sur la base de ces échanges, nous puissions réussir à avoir un entretien au sommet entre le président Rouhani et le président Trump. Bien entendu, moi-même et nos partenaires qui ont un rôle à jouer dans la négociation nucléaire pourront être là et seront pleinement associés. Et je pense que ce rendez-vous est très important et que ces derniers jours de clarification, à la fois les messages forts qui ont été apportés, le mouvement qui a été fait, le travail qui a été fait aussi entre nos ministres, et je veux remercier ici le ministre Mnuchin, le ministre Le Maire, le ministre Le Drian qui sont là et qui ont permis de beaucoup avancer sur ces sujets. Nous avons créé les conditions de cette rencontre et donc d'un accord. Je suis toujours très prudent, il faut être très humble, mais je pense que c'est en tout cas quelque chose qui stoppe toute escalade et qui permet d'arriver aux objectifs que nous poursuivons. Et je veux vraiment vous remercier, Président, d'avoir, durant la discussion que nous avons eue à la fois samedi midi et samedi soir, montré cette volonté de trouver un accord, ce qui est votre tempérament, et de le trouver aussi dans des termes qui sont bons pour la sécurité de la région. Parce que l'objectif final, l'exigence que vous avez, c'est qu'il n'y ait pas justement l'obtention de l'arme nucléaire et d'avoir plus de visibilité dans le temps. Sur le commerce, nous partageons beaucoup de constats, d'analyses. On a eu une très bonne discussion, j'y reviendrai plus tard dans le détail. Mais là-dessus, je crois pouvoir dire que l'échange a clarifié ce qui, légitimement, c'est que les États-Unis considèrent aujourd'hui que la situation n'est pas juste. Nous avons des règles internationales sur le commerce. Et je crois que nous sommes tous d'accord, et d'ailleurs nous l'avons dit dans cette page que nous sortons ensemble, qu'il est bon d'avoir des règles et une organisation tous ensemble du commerce. Mais cette organisation collective, elle n'a pas été assez efficace pour lever les barrières réglementaires. Elle n'a pas été assez efficace pour régler les problèmes quand il y en avait. Elle n'a pas été assez efficace pour protéger la propriété intellectuelle de nos industriels. Il y a des discussions en cours, en particulier une discussion entre le président Trump et le président Xi, avec, on a vu encore ces dernières heures, des évolutions et un accord qui sera, je l'espère, trouvé. Mais nous avons aussi ici, collectivement, réaffirmé notre volonté de changer ces règles du commerce pour arriver à nos fins. Et dire on doit les moderniser profondément, les réformer, pour que toutes ces situations injustes dont nos pays ont parfois été victimes, qui fait que nos travailleurs ne sont pas respectés, que la propriété intellectuelle n'est pas protégée, doivent être stoppées. Et là, le processus de réforme, nous le connaissons et nous allons nous y atteler ensemble. Et ensuite, il y a eu, il faut bien le dire, beaucoup de nervosité, parfois liée à des malentendus, ou à ce que certains acteurs économiques très puissants pouvaient dire, sur cette fameuse taxe numérique française. On s'en est expliqué, parfois on en a plaisanté, mais je crois qu'on a trouvé un très bon accord, et là encore, le travail de nos ministres a permis de faire beaucoup avancer les choses. Au fond, nous avons dans nos économies des situations qui sont très injustes. C'est que certains acteurs ne payent pas d'impôts et créent une concurrence déloyale avec d'autres acteurs. Ce sont d'ailleurs ces gros acteurs internationaux qui ne payent pas d'impôts, ceux qui créent les changements les plus brutaux, créent parfois les plus grands déséquilibres mondiaux. Est-ce juste? Non. Nous avons beaucoup poussé pour changer les règles internationales sur ce sujet, le faire au niveau européen, et c'est vrai qu'une dizaine de pays européens, la France, mais aussi l'Italie, la Grande-Bretagne qui s'apprête à le faire, beaucoup de pays sont en train de le prendre sur une base nationale. Mais ce n'est pas contre telle ou telle compagnie, c'est pour régler ce problème. Et d'ailleurs, beaucoup de compagnies françaises seront touchées par cette taxe. Ce que la France veut, ce n'est pas du tout mettre en place cette taxe. Vous m'avez entendu, pour certains, il y a plusieurs mois. C'est régler le problème international. Et je crois que là, on a fait une vraie avancée parce que nous avons ensemble acté le fait que nous allons travailler pour trouver un accord en 2020 pour moderniser les règles de la fiscalité internationale dans le cadre de l'OCDE. Ce qui nous permettra de prendre en compte ces évolutions nécessaires et de lutter contre la concurrence fiscale dommageable qui détruit des emplois, y compris aux États-Unis. Sur cette taxe numérique, nous avons aussi beaucoup travaillé en bilatéral franco-américain et nous avons un accord pour sortir des difficultés qu'il y a eu entre nous. Et donc on va travailler ensemble sur cette base bilatérale et sur cette base internationale pour trouver une solution, et je l'ai dit très clairement. Le jour où on a cette fiscalité internationale, la France supprime tout projet de taxe, parce que c'était d'ailleurs ce qu'on voulait faire, et tout ce qui a été payé au titre de cette taxe sera déduit de cette taxe internationale. C'est ce qui a été vu entre les ministres. Je les laisserai évidemment, s'ils le veulent, préciser les choses. Mais ce qui est important de dire ici, c'est qu'on a trouvé un accord qui est bon de part et d'autre, que ce faisant, on permet de régler des situations internationales qui étaient extrêmement négatives, et qu'on modernise le système fiscal international ensemble. On travaille à des objectifs communs, avec un esprit de coopération, et je pense que c'est extrêmement important. Voilà, sur la Libye, sur la Syrie, la Corée du Nord, Hong Kong, vous le verrez dans le texte, on a beaucoup avancé, travaillé ensemble dans cet esprit d'unité que j'évoquais. Et enfin, sur beaucoup d'initiatives concrètes aussi, je veux en citer une dont nous avons parlé le premier soir, qui est l'Amazonie. Le président Trump a eu le président Bolsonaro au téléphone avant de venir. Il a d'ailleurs lui-même engagé très rapidement les États-Unis d'Amérique en soutien auprès des populations, et nous avons acté d'un plan d'initiative extrêmement ambitieux que le président Piñera a présenté ce matin, après avoir fait cette concertation avec l'ensemble des chefs d'État et de gouvernement de la région, comme nous l'avions souhaité et le président Trump l'avait souhaité. Voilà, je ne veux pas rentrer dans plus de détails, mais je voulais insister sur ces points, pour vous dire que nous avons, avec beaucoup d'entrain, travaillé ensemble très étroitement avec le président Trump durant ces 2 jours, que nous avons réussi à dégager durant ce G7, et je veux remercier tous nos collègues, je crois, des points de convergence inédits, très positifs, qui permettent d'avancer utilement. Maintenant, on doit continuer à travailler dans les prochaines semaines, les prochains mois, avec beaucoup de force. La Corée du Nord, on sait ô combien le président Trump est engagé dans ce combat et continuera de le faire, on nous en a parlé tout à l'heure, et on sera derrière lui. J'espère qu'on trouvera un accord sur la Chine qui serait un vrai changement. Et on sera ensemble, côte à côte, sur tous les combats qui sont à mener. Je voulais vraiment vous remercier, Président, de votre présence et de cette action durant ces 2 jours. Remercier la Première Dame, également à vos côtés, qui a été active aux côtés de mon épouse et de toutes les Premières Dames présentes, mais qui nous fait toujours l'honneur de sa présence en France. Et elle sait ô combien elle est populaire dans notre pays. Et Président, vous aurez l'année prochaine aussi la présidence de ce G7 et je vous laisse également annoncer à nos amis où et comment vous comptez l'organiser. J'y serai avec la même volonté de construire, de bâtir, de créer l'unité et la convergence. Mais merci infiniment, Président. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you very much, and I think more importantly than anything, I wanted to come up here to say that because the job that President Macron and your wife, by the way, who is a great lady, Bridget, would like to thank Bridget. She has been spectacular, spent a tremendous amount of time with Melania and some of the folks who came in, some of the wives that came in, and they had a great tour of the area, and it's a beautiful area. But I want to thank you very much, Mr. President, for the incredible job you did. This is a truly successful G7. There was tremendous unity. There was great unity. Sometimes I'd read a little bit of false reporting, and I will tell you there was, in fact, we would have stayed for another hour. Nobody wanted to leave. We were accomplishing a lot, but I think more importantly, we were getting along very well. 7 countries, and it really was the G7, and you have been a spectacular leader on this. And I want to thank you, and I want to thank the great country of France. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, my friend.
And with that, I think, excuse me, I was, go ahead, let's go.
No, I just wanted to say we will take 2 questions from each side. Afterwards, I will say goodbye to my friend President Trump. I will leave the room in order for you to follow up with your
If you'd like, we could do 2 each, and then we'll both leave the room. Would you prefer that, or would you prefer 10? I just don't want to have the President of France standing here while I'm answering these absolutely wonderful questions, okay? So why don't we start with a question for France?
These 4 questions are about G7 and US-France relations.
And Emmanuel's going to have his own press conference after this.
Exactly.
So that'll be fine. Go ahead. To France, John. To France.
Thank you, Marco. Of course, they are the host country. They should go first. Monsieur le Président Macron, China was not on the official agenda, but it was certainly a big part of the discussions here at the G7. Are you concerned that the trade war that exists now between the United States and China could harm the global economy? If you are, did you talk to President Trump about that? And are you also at the same time concerned that if China's current trade practices go unchecked, that a decade from now we could be in a very terrible situation?
Sur ce sujet, nous en avons évidemment longuement discuté durant la session sur l'économie mondiale d'hier matin. Sur vos 2 sujets, les discussions qui sont en cours entre la Chine et les États-Unis d'Amérique, évidemment, elles créent, on le voit bien, des incertitudes qui agitent les marchés, les investisseurs, et qui, pendant le temps de la négociation, créent des tensions, ce qui est le cas de toute discussion. Et on l'a vu sur les différents marchés actions que nous connaissons. Maintenant, la question, c'est l'issue de cette discussion. C'est pourquoi ce à quoi nous sommes attachés sur ce point, c'est qu'un accord puisse être trouvé entre les 2 premières puissances économiques. Le président Trump nous a clairement indiqué sa volonté de trouver un accord. Nous avons d'ailleurs noté, encore il y a quelques heures, les messages plutôt positifs, encourageants, qui ont pu être distillés. Donc on voit que les choses bougent. Mon souhait très profond, c'est qu'un accord puisse être trouvé entre les États-Unis d'Amérique et la Chine sur le plan commercial. Parce que je pense que ce sera positif pour tout le monde. Ni les États-Unis ni la Chine ne sont naïfs sur le plan économique et industriel. Donc cet accord, il devra être équilibré pour être bon de tous les côtés. Nous veillons à ce qu'il soit bon pour l'ensemble du globe. Et donc, dans ce contexte-là, nos paramètres soient pris en compte. Ça a été aussi l'objet de notre discussion. Donc, ce qui est mauvais, si je puis dire, pour l'économie mondiale, c'est l'incertitude. Et donc, plus vite cet accord est trouvé, plus on réduit cette incertitude. Et c'est très clairement ce que nous avons échangé hier et ce qui est la volonté du président américain. Sur ce qui est ensuite des pratiques commerciales, je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, pour moi, la manière la plus efficace pour nous et la plus stratégique de régler notre relation commerciale avec la Chine, c'est de développer les échanges, mais de s'assurer que ces échanges s'inscrivent dans le cadre des règles internationales. Le problème que nous avons parfois eu, on le connaît très bien avec l'économie chinoise, qui est une grande économie avec laquelle il y a eu beaucoup d'investissements, qu'il s'agisse des États-Unis d'Amérique, des pays européens, du Canada ou du Japon. Le problème, c'est les sujets de respect de la propriété intellectuelle, c'est le traitement de surcapacité, qui parfois ont déséquilibré certains marchés mondiaux, et c'est la capacité à régler très rapidement les conflits qu'on peut avoir et de fixer les situations déloyales. Force est de constater que lorsqu'on a fait ce commerce hors des règles de l'OMC, les choses ne marchaient pas bien, on n'était pas bien protégés. Et qu'ensuite, lorsqu'on l'a fait dans les règles de l'OMC, avec ses règles existantes, n'a pas permis de bien régler ces sujets. Et donc, ce que nous avons décidé ensemble hier matin, c'est maintenant d'accélérer, mais avec un agenda très réaliste, de dire on doit changer les règles du commerce international pour que chacun puisse échanger de manière libre et juste, équilibrée, et donc que ces sujets que je viens d'évoquer, qui parfois ont été mauvais pour nos économies, puissent être réglés dans un cadre international qu'on veut profondément changer. Et donc là, c'est à nous, si je puis dire, à nos ministres, dans les forums qui sont prévus, de faire ce travail. On partage le même objectif politique. Et donc pour moi, la manière de régler ces pratiques que vous évoquiez, c'est sans doute des accords, j'espère positifs, qui seront trouvés, et c'est le renouvellement de nos règles commerciales internationales comme nous nous y sommes engagés hier matin.
President Trump, are you satisfied with how far the proposed WTO reforms will go? Because
No, I'm not,
you have
but-
spoken about the need for that. And second to that,
We're getting there, John, just to answer that. We're
second to
getting
that,
there.
do you believe that China is sincere about what it said this morning? Or
Yes.
do you think that they are just trying to calm the markets and play for time? Because our sister network, the Fox Business Network, has been told by Chinese sources that they have no plans on going back to where they were in terms of the negotiations this spring on intellectual property, forced technology transfer, ownership. So
We'll see, John.
Do you trust that they are sincere
I
about
do.
this?
I think they want to make a deal very badly. I think that was elevated last night, very late in the night. I see an alert, or as you would call it, breaking news. And it was that the vice chairman, we're not talking about somebody from China at a low level, the vice chairman of China came out that he wants to see a deal made. He wants it to be made under calm conditions, using the word calm. I agree with him on that. And China has taken a very hard hit over the last number of months. You know, they've lost 3 million jobs. It'll soon be much more than 3 million jobs. Their chain is breaking. The chain is breaking up like nobody's seen before. And once that happens, it's very hard to put it back together. You understand? I think they very much want to make a deal. And the longer they wait, the harder it is to put it back, if it can be put back at all. So I believe they want to do a deal. The tariffs have hit them very hard. In a fairly short period of time, the United States will have collected over $100 billion in tariffs. And I say it again, the media failed to acknowledge it. But if you look at the goods coming in from China, we're talking about China, not other countries. If you look at the goods, they have a power that others don't have. But that power is only good for so long. They've manipulated their currency, they've devalued their currency, and they put a lot of cash into the system. And because of that, the prices have not gone up, or if they've gone up, it's been very little, because they want to keep people working. If the prices go up, they're not going to be able to keep people working. They're not going to be able to compete. It's a brilliant market. It's a brilliant, brilliant market, the world market. A lot of markets are brilliant. And frankly, I think that China cannot, I don't know, maybe they can, maybe they can't. I don't think they can do that. And I think they're very smart. And I think President Xi is a great leader who happens to be a brilliant man. And he can't lose 3 million jobs in a very short period of time. And that's going to be magnified many times over. And it's going to break down the Chinese system of trade. And he can't do that. So when you say, do you think they want to? Maybe they want to and maybe they don't. But I think they want to make a deal. I'm not sure they have a choice. And I don't say that as a threat. I don't think they have a choice. In the meantime, the United States, which has never collected 10 cents from China, will, in a fairly short period of time, be over $100 billion in tariffs. So I think they want to make a deal. Very badly. Go ahead.
Deuxième question.
Bonjour messieurs les présidents, Mathieu Coache, BFM TV. D'abord une question pour monsieur Macron. Vous venez de déclarer avoir créé les conditions d'une rencontre et donc d'un accord entre le président Trump et le président Rouhani. Est-ce que cela veut dire que la France pourrait être par exemple médiateur de cette rencontre? Et plus concrètement, de quoi avez-vous discuté au sujet de ce possible accord avec l'Iran? Et puis une question pour monsieur Trump. Êtes-vous prêt à lever ou à assouplir les sanctions américaines sur les exportations de pétrole iranien? Et seriez-vous prêt à rencontrer le président Rouhani? Merci.
Yeah.
Sur votre première question, les termes de la discussion, ils sont assez simples. Un accord a été signé en 2015, le 14 juillet 2015, celui qu'on appelle le JCPOA. Et cet accord a prévu des garanties pour la communauté internationale, en particulier pour les signataires de cet accord, que l'Iran n'enrichisse plus l'uranium sur une période de temps, je simplifie les termes de l'accord, mais jusqu'en 2025, en contrepartie de la réouverture dans beaucoup de secteurs économiques et d'un investissement massif, largement porté, il faut bien le dire, par les États-Unis d'Amérique. Cet accord avait un double avantage, stabilité et sécurité, et réouverture économique, ce qui était bon pour l'Iran. Cet accord avait des insuffisances. Je rappelle au demeurant que les négociateurs français en 2015 furent les plus âpres et que la France était la plus hésitante à signer cet accord, précisément parce qu'on considérait qu'il fallait le maximum de garanties. Le président Trump, durant sa campagne, s'est engagé devant ses électeurs à avoir quelque chose de plus exigeant, de plus dur, parce qu'il considérait que cet accord était insuffisant. C'est ce qui l'a conduit à sortir du JCPOA. Et donc aujourd'hui, par les sanctions qui ont été prises par le président Trump, l'économie iranienne subit de fortes conséquences et un fort ralentissement. Et donc, cette situation, très clairement, c'est l'aspect, si je puis dire, positif qui peut être vu de notre point de vue, crée une pression et donc les conditions pour améliorer les termes d'un accord. De l'autre côté, elle conduit à des réactions côté iranien qui dit « j'ai signé un accord, mais les parties prenantes en sortent et ne respectent pas ces termes ». Et donc, on commençait symboliquement à enrichir l'uranium et menace d'aller plus loin et de sortir du JCPOA. Au moment où nous nous trouvons, quel est l'intérêt que nous devons poursuivre, compte tenu des deux objectifs que je citais? Être sûr que l'Iran ne se dote jamais de l'arme nucléaire et qu'il n'y ait pas non plus d'embrasement dans la région. Et donc, ce dont nous avons parlé très concrètement, c'est de voir comment on peut améliorer fortement, au fond, comment on peut bâtir un nouvel accord nucléaire avec l'Iran. Le président Trump a été très clair samedi soir pour dire qu'il veut une période de temps beaucoup plus longue, qu'il veut plus de sites surveillés. Donc voilà, c'est comment on améliore, comment on construit un accord qui est beaucoup plus ambitieux sur le plan des exigences en termes de sûreté. Et de l'autre côté, on convainc les Iraniens, on peut convaincre les Iraniens d'aller dans ce sens si on leur donne précisément des compensations économiques. Et donc si on bouge, soit sur des lignes de crédit, soit sur des réouvertures de secteurs. Je ne peux aujourd'hui rien vous dire publiquement, parce que tout ce que je vous dirais dans le détail viendrait, au fond, fragiliser les discussions précises que nous sommes en train d'avoir. Mais c'est ça, les termes que nous sommes en train de discuter. C'est la base de notre initiative. Il y a eu une initiative japonaise, moi je le fais en transparence avec le président, mais s'étant mis d'accord sur un objectif stratégique, je veux qu'on avance dans ce cadre et on propose. À un moment donné, il faut qu'il y ait une rencontre entre le président américain et le président iranien. Et donc moi, je souhaite que dans les prochaines semaines, il y ait une telle rencontre. La France, elle joue un rôle en lien avec les autres partenaires qui sont signataires du JCPOA. Mais après, c'est de créer les conditions, parce qu'on aura donné de la visibilité, collectivement, pour qu'il y ait surtout cet accord qui puisse être scellé et cette rencontre entre les deux présidents. Et donc moi, je préfère parler d'initiatives concertées, d'échanges, plutôt que de médiation, parce qu'au fond, on échange tout le temps avec le président Trump, je partage son objectif, on a pu parfois dire on n'est pas d'accord sur la méthode, je veux qu'on arrive et qu'on trouve cet accord. Il me semble qu'il y a eu un vrai changement, c'est que ce matin, le président Rouhani s'est montré ouvert à cette rencontre. Le président Trump, depuis des semaines, dit, il est exigeant, il a mis ses sanctions, il a dit, moi je suis prêt à rencontrer pour trouver un deal. Voilà, donc je pense qu'on avance. Je souhaite que cette rencontre puisse se tenir et qu'il puisse y avoir un accord entre les États-Unis d'Amérique et l'Iran. Et la France jouera le rôle qu'elle doit jouer avec la Grande-Bretagne, avec l'Allemagne, avec toutes les autres puissances signatrices et les membres permanents du Conseil de sécurité.
Iran is a country that is not the same country that it was 2.5 years ago when I came into office. Iran was the #1 state of terror throughout the world. There were 18 sites of confliction in my first week when I spoke with the folks at the Pentagon, including lots of generals and lots of other military experts. 18 sites of confliction, meaning 18 sites of big problems. Every one of them was backed by Iran, or in some cases actually using Iranian soldiers, but at a minimum Iranian wealth, much of it given in the ridiculous deal where they were given $150 billion plus $1.8 billion in cash, and they used that money for some bad purposes. With that being said, I think that Iran is a country of tremendous potential. We're not looking for leadership change. We're not looking for that kind of change. This country has been through that many times before. That doesn't work. We're looking for no nuclear weapons, no ballistic missiles, and a longer period of time. Very simple. We can have it done in a very short period of time. And I really believe that Iran can be a great nation. I'd like to see that happen. But they can't have nuclear weapons. Okay? Thank you. Excuse me? If the circumstances were correct or the right, I would certainly agree to that. But in the meantime, they have to be good players. You understand what that means? And they can't do what they were saying they're going to do, because if they do that, they're going to be met with really very violent force. We have no choice. So I think they're going to be good. I really think they'd like to. And by the way, President Macron told me every step that he was making yesterday. A lot of you said, oh, he came in. And he told me long before he came in what was happening, I didn't think it was appropriate to meet yesterday, too soon, and things have to be worked out first. But President Macron told me exactly what was happening, who was coming, what time they were coming, where they were going to meet. And after the meeting, he told me exactly what happened. And I think he had a very positive meeting. Prime Minister Abe of Japan, also a large purchaser of oil from Iran. He was also very much involved, and, you know, look, he knows everybody there, so he was a very, very positive force. But I have to tell you, the president's done an excellent job, and we're going to see how it all turns out. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I say it all the time about everything. Maybe it works, and maybe it doesn't. But I'll tell you what, we made a ridiculous deal. We gave him $150 billion, we gave him $1.8 billion, and we got nothing. We got nothing. And by the way, that agreement was so short-term that it expires in a very short period of time. With a country, you don't make a deal that short. Countries last for long times, and you don't do short-term deals, especially when you're paying that kind of money. So I have good feelings about Iran. I have good feelings that it'll work. I know many Iranians living in New York City. I have many friends from Iran. They're incredible people, incredible people. So the last thing I'd like to see is a big problem, but we have to do what we have to do, okay? Go ahead, please. No, you first, go ahead. No, go ahead, yes.
Thank you. President Macron, did you seek President Trump's permission before you invited Foreign Minister Zarif, or did you simply inform him that he was coming?
Thanks for this very precise question. No, but to be very clear, and we are part of JCPOA. We decided to remain in this deal. So we are very much interested by the situation as a sovereign country. That's why we want the different parties to move. On the other side, as President Trump made it very clear over the summer, we never spoke on behalf of other countries. We just tried, tested some solutions and to see if we can find an agreement with different countries. So we took an initiative this summer to make a proposal, a technical one. I got the reaction from Iran through President Zarif's visit on Friday morning in Paris. After the discussion we had at the G7 dinner on Saturday evening, I thought that it was very clear about where we can go together. So the day after, I decided to invite, as friends, Minister Zarif. So I informed, before making it, I informed President Trump that it was my idea not to involve the United States, not to say this is on behalf of you, of everybody, but to say, as friends, I think it would be a good idea to ask him to go back and try to negotiate something separately. So I did it on my own. I informed, before making it, President Trump. He was informed at each minute about the situation. And the idea for me was, in case of structural move and important move and appropriate solutions, perhaps to have meetings between ministers, not at President Trump's level, because President Trump's level is President Rouhani. So this is my precise answer. This is a French initiative, but made by a clear information of the US President before, information as well of the three Europeans, and each time I informed President Trump in order to monitor the situation and to appreciate together if something more was adapted.
I have to say the JCPOA was a bad deal, should not have been entered into. A lot of things could have happened that would have been much different. They're allowed to test ballistic missiles. You're not allowed to go to various sites to check. And some of those sites are the most obvious sites for the creation or the making of nuclear weapons. And those things have to be changed, and other things have to be changed. And I will tell you, I have very good feelings about it. I think that we're going to do something. It may not be immediately, but I think ultimately we're going to do something. As I said, Iran is a much different country than it was 2.5 years ago. And we can get that back, and I'd encourage it. I actually had friends years ago, many years ago, they were in the real estate business, and they were in Iran, and they were building houses and building housing and building office buildings and apartment houses, and they did very well. They made a lot of money, and to this day, they're not exactly the youngest developers anymore, but I tell you, they were young when they went over there. They made a lot of money, and they loved the people, and they loved what was going on. And it's a country with tremendous potential. I also say that, by the way, with respect to North Korea. Kim Jong-un, who I've gotten to know extremely well, First Lady has gotten to know Kim Jong-un, and I think she'd agree with me. He is a man with a country that has tremendous potential. You're in between China, Russia, and South Korea. People want to get to South Korea. They got to get there somehow, and if they're going to do anything other than essentially fly, they want to go through. So railroads and everything else, so many things want to happen there. I think that North Korea has tremendous economic potential, and I think that Kim Jong-un sees that. He would be the leader, and I think he sees the tremendous potential that it's got. With respect to Iran, same thing. Iran is incredible people, an incredible country potentially, location that's a little rough neighborhood, but eventually it's going to be a beautiful neighborhood. I think that it's going to work out. And I really believe that those countries that went into the original deal that more and more are agreeing with what I did. But I think those countries are going to be saying thank you someday. I hope they're going to be saying, including France, including the president, because I think we did the right thing. I know we did the right thing. If for no other reason, it's just too short. It's almost expiring, if you think about it. And somebody said, well, you'll go and make an extension. No, no, they're great negotiators. Look at what they did to get the deal. Look at what they did to John Kerry and to President Obama. Look what happened, where they're bringing plane loads of cash, plane loads, big planes, 757s, Boeing 757s, coming in loaded up with cash. What kind of a deal is that? So I think a lot of good things are going to happen. And I just want to say this because I've spoken a lot with the president this last 2.5 days. We've never had a better relationship. We had a lunch that lasted for quite a while that many of you got to see. It was the two of us. No staff, no anything. He wasn't trying to impress his people. I wasn't trying to impress his people. We were just trying to impress each other. And I'll tell you what, it was the best period of time we've ever had. And we accomplished a lot. I don't mean just, gee whiz, wasn't that nice? He's a very capable man. He's doing a great job for France. He did an incredible job for the G7, and I just want to thank you. And you go ahead to your news conference, and very special. This was a very special, very unified 2.5 days, and I want to thank you for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I will leave the floor and the press conference to President Trump, and I will wait for the end of your own press conference. Voilà, finir. Je ferai une conférence de presse. Je vous laisse la poser au président. Allez-y.
Écoutez, je ne veux pas faire de délation, Monsieur le Président, mais on a vu votre épouse, la Première Dame, boire un verre de vin français hier. Donc, est-ce que vous pouvez renoncer à votre menace de sanctionner les vins français, puisque, si nous comprenons bien, vous avez abouti à un accord sur la taxation des entreprises du numérique. Est-ce que vous pouvez nous confirmer donc qu'il y a bien un accord entre vous et la France sur la taxation des entreprises du numérique? Merci beaucoup.
No, I can confirm that the First Lady loved your French wine, okay? All right? She loved your French wine. So thank you very much. That's fine. You can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci à vous. I will wait for the end of this press conference to have the press conference of the presidency. I will leave the floor to you. Thank you. Thank you. Good job.
She's worse than you are. I can't believe it. Jonathan.
Cher vieux Paris de mes amours, que c'est bon d'être de retour au printemps de ma vie. Bonjour Paris, tous mes chagrins, tous mes plaisirs, la symphonie des souvenirs surgissent de la nuit. La muette, ma chambrette, Saint-Lazare, ma guitare, la huchette, chansonnette, invalide, ventre vide. Sous les toits de tes vieux quartiers, flotte des ombres bien-aimées du temps de mes folies. La Chapelle, oh Gisèle, la Villette, oh Claudette, la Bastille, douce Camille, République Dominique, bonjour Paris. Tu me fais revivre mes amours et retrouver pour quelques jours des frissons sans prix. Merci, merci Paris. Bonjour Paris.
Probably it'll cost me anywhere from $3 to $5 billion to be president. And the only thing I care about is this country. Couldn't care less, otherwise I wouldn't have done it. People have asked me, what do you think it costs? And between opportunity, not doing things, I used to get a lot of money to make speeches. Now I give speeches all the time. You know what I get? Zippo, and that's good. And I did a lot of great jobs and great deals that I don't do anymore, and I don't want to do them, because the deals I'm making are great deals for the country, and that's to me much more important. Doral happens to be within Miami. It's a city. It's a wonderful place. It's a very, very successful area of Florida. It's very importantly only 5 minutes from the airport. The airport's right next door. It's a big international airport, one of the biggest in the world. Everybody that's coming, all of these people with all of their big entourages come. It's set up so, and by the way, my people looked at 12 sites, all good, but some were 2 hours from an airport, some were 4 hours from, I mean, they were so far away. Some didn't allow this, or they didn't allow that. With Doral, we have a series of magnificent buildings. We call them bungalows. They each hold from 50 to 70 very luxurious rooms with magnificent views. We have incredible conference rooms, incredible restaurants. It's like such a natural. We wouldn't even have to do the work that they did here, and they've done a beautiful job. They've really done a beautiful job. And what we have also is Miami. And we have many hundreds of acres, so that in terms of parking, in terms of all of the things that you need, the ballrooms are among the biggest in Florida and the best. It's brand new, and they want that. My people wanted it. From my standpoint, I'm not going to make any money. In my opinion, I'm not going to make any money. I don't want to make money. I don't care about making money. If I wanted to make money, I wouldn't worry about $3 billion to $5 billion, because that's what, I mean, at some point I'm going to detail that, and we'll show. But I think it's just a great place to be. I think having it in Miami is fantastic, really fantastic. Having it at that particular place because of the way it's set up. Each country can have their own villa or their own bungalow. And the bungalows, when I say, they have a lot of units in them. So I think it just works out well. And when my people came back, they took tours. They went to different places. I won't mention places, but you'll have a list because they're going to give a presentation on it fairly soon. They went to places all over the country. And they came back and they said, this is where we'd like to be. Now, we had military people doing it. We had Secret Service people doing it. We had people that really understand what it's about. It's not about me. It's about getting the right location. I think it's very important. Jonathan?
Trying to boost your own brand.
Not at all. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Thank you, Mr. President. President Macron said he'd like to see talks between you and President Rouhani within weeks. Does that sound realistic to you? Could you see yourself in talks with the Iranians within weeks?
Well, it does. I don't know the gentleman. I think I know him a little bit just by watching over the last number of years what's happened. Tell you one thing, he's a great negotiator. But I think he's going to want to meet. I think Iran wants to get their situation straightened out. Now, is that based on fact or based on gut? That's based on gut. But they want to get their situation straightened out, Jonathan. And they're really hurting badly. Their inflation, as you know, because I saw you reporting on it, their inflation is through the roof. Their economy is tanked entirely. The sanctions are absolutely hurting them horribly. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see that. They're great people. I don't want to see that. But we can't let them have a nuclear weapon. Can't let it happen. So I think that there's a really good chance that we would meet. Jeff, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Another follow-up from what the President of France said. He said that there might be a need for compensation to Iran. Would you, given all of the criticism you've made of the JCPOA and the money that they got, be open to giving Iran compensation
No.
if it met some of the criteria that you laid out?
What he's talking in terms of compensation is they are out of money. And they may need a short-term letter of credit or loan. No, we're not paying. We don't pay. But they may need some money to get them over a very rough patch. And if they do need money, certainly, and it would be secured by oil, which to me is great security. And they have a lot of oil, but it's secured by oil. So we're really talking about a letter of credit type facility.
From the U.S. or from all the countries
It would be
involved?
from numerous countries, and it comes back. It would expire. It would be paid back immediately, and very quickly. Yes, go ahead, please. Go ahead. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Now it's Aoyama with the Asahi Shimbun, a
Good.
Japanese newspaper.
Good.
Now,
Just left
now the
your
U.S.
Prime Minister, Abe. Good man. Great man.
Okay, and now the U.S. and Japan have an agreement in principle, which you said is a tremendous trade deal for the United States. So
And for Japan, I would
yes.
say. Both.
So are you still considering imposing Section 232 tariffs on Japan's auto exports to the United States on national security grounds?
Not at this moment, no. Not at this moment. Well, it's one of the reasons we made the deal, but no, not at this moment. It's something I could do at a later date if I wanted to, but we're not looking at that. We just want to be treated fairly. You know, Japan has had a tremendous trade surplus with the United States for many, many years, long before I came here. And I'll tell you something, we're transforming our country. We're taking these horrible, one-sided, foolish, very dumb, stupid, if you'd like to use that word, because it's so descriptive. We're taking these trade deals that are so bad, and we're making good, solid deals out of them. And that's transforming our country. That will be transformative and very exciting, I think, for our country. Very, very exciting. Please, go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Well, I didn't actually say you. I said the woman behind you. So why don't we do her first? You've been asking a lot of questions all day long.
Thanks, Mr. President. Yamiche Shelcender.
Can't say I don't give you access, right? Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. President. Yamiche Shelcender with PBS NewsHour.
Yes.
Why do you think it's appropriate to invite Russia to the G7, given that they've meddled in the 2016 election? And are you worried that if Russia does come to the G7, that it might hurt you politically because it's only going to be a couple months before the 2020 election?
I don't care politically. I really don't. A lot of people don't understand this. I ran one election, and I won. Happened to be for president. I don't care politically. I'm going to run another election. I think I'm winning based on polls that we see. Whether I win or not, I have to do the right thing. So I don't do things for political reasons. Is it good? Probably not. Maybe it is. I mean, a lot of people are smart. A lot of people say having Russia, which is a power, having them inside the room is better than having them outside the room. By the way, there were numerous people during the G7 that felt that way. And we didn't take a vote or anything, but we did discuss it. My inclination is to say, yes, they should be in. They were... Really, it was a President Obama. I'm not blaming him, but a lot of bad things happened with President Putin and President Obama. One of the things that happened was, as you know, what happened with a very big area, a very, very big and important area in the Middle East where the red line was drawn, and then President Obama decided that he was not going to do anything about it. You can't draw red lines in the sand. You just can't do it. And the other was in Ukraine, having to do with a certain section of Ukraine that you know very well, where it was sort of taken away from President Obama. Not taken away from President Trump, taken away from President Obama. President Obama was not happy that this happened because it was embarrassing to him, right? It was very embarrassing to him. And he wanted Russia to be out of what was called the G8. And that was his determination. He was outsmarted by Putin. He was outsmarted. President Putin outsmarted President Obama. Wait a minute. And I can understand how President Obama would feel. He wasn't happy, and they're not in for that reason. Now, I'm only thinking about the world, and I'm thinking about this country in terms of the G7, whether it's G7, G8. I think it would be better to have Russia inside the tent than outside the tent. Do we live either way? Yes, we live either way. Is it politically popular for me to say that? Possibly not. I think a lot of people would agree with me, frankly, but possibly not. I do nothing for politics. I know a lot of you aren't going to, you're going to smile at that. I do nothing for politics. I do what's right. And people like what I do. But I just do what's right. If I wanted to go strictly by politics, I'd probably poll that, and possibly I'd say, oh, gee, I don't want Russia in. But I really think it's good for security of the world. It's good for the economics of the world. Remember, they're building a big pipeline in Europe, going right up to Germany. And I said to Angela, who I had a great relationship, but I said, you know, you pay Russia billions of dollars, and then we defend you from Russia.
Why
And I say, how does that
the
work?
misleading statement that Russia outsmarted President Obama
Well, he
when
did.
other countries have said that the reason why Russia was kicked out was very clearly because they annexed Crimea? Why keep repeating what some people would see as a clear lie?
Well, it was annexed during President, I know you like President Obama, but it was annexed during President Obama's term. If it was annexed during my term, I'd say, sorry, folks, I made a mistake, or sorry, folks. President Obama was helping Ukraine. Crimea was annexed during his term. Now, it's a very big area, very important area. Russia has its submarine. That's where they do their submarine work, and that's where they dock large and powerful submarines, but not as powerful as ours and not as large as ours. But they have their submarines. And President Obama was pure and simply outsmarted. They took Crimea during his term. That was not a good thing. It could have been stopped. Could have been stopped with the right whatever. It could have been stopped. But President Obama was unable to stop it, and it's too bad. Go ahead.
As the G7 host next year, you were allowed to invite other countries to come, guest countries, even though they're not necessarily part of the overall group. Would you consider inviting Vladimir Putin under those circumstances?
I don't know that he'd accept. Those are tough circumstances. He was a part of G8, and all of a sudden, he's not out or he's not in. So I think, John, actually, that's a pretty tough thing for him. You know, he's a proud person. Would I invite him? I would certainly invite him. Whether or not he could come psychologically, I think that's a tough thing for him to do. You have a G8, now it's a G7, and you invite the person that was thrown out really by President Obama, and really because he got outsmarted. President Obama, pure and simple. And don't forget, it was not just Crimea. It was the red line in the sand. And Obama said, never violate the red line in the sand. And then they went ahead and they killed many children with gas. It was terrible. And he did nothing about it. I did, but I was there years later. I did something about it, but I was there late. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Can you help us understand the timeline on the China calls? Were you referring to the statement by the Vice President?
Well, we've had many calls. Secretary Mnuchin is here, and you've had many calls over the last 24 hours, but certainly over the last 48 hours. We've had many calls, not just one. This isn't one. And these are high-level calls. They want to make a deal. And by the way, I think a deal's going to be made, but they want to make a deal.
So the Chinese are saying that there weren't any
The
particular
Chinese are
special
not
calls.
saying
Are
that.
they not being
Excuse me,
special?
let me explain something. The vice chairman of China, do you get higher than that other than President Xi? The vice president, the vice chairman, it's like the vice president, the vice chairman made the statement that he wants to make a deal, that he wants to see a calm atmosphere. He wants it all to happen. That says it there. I don't have to talk about, you know, you folks were reporting before, well, we can't find any phone call. He released a statement. I didn't release it. He released a statement.
But there were phone calls, sir, Mr. President. There were phone calls.
Numerous calls. And not only with Steve, there were calls with other people, too. Just so you understand, China wants to make a deal. Now, whether or not we make a deal, it's got to be a great deal for us. You know, and I told this to President Xi, who I really respect. I really do. I have great respect, and I like him, too. He's a tough guy. But I have a lot of feeling for President Xi. He's very outstanding in so many ways. But I told him very strongly, I said, look, You're starting up here, and you're making $500 billion a year and stealing our intellectual property. We're down on the floor, lower than the floor. You can't make a 50-50 deal. This has to be a deal that's better for us. And if it's not better, let's not do business together. I don't want to do business. Forget about tariffs for a second. We're taking in tremendous amounts of money. Forget that. I don't want to do business. Now, when I raise and he raises, I raise and he raises, we can never catch up. We have to balance our trading relationship, at least to an extent. And they were unwilling to do that. And we'll never have a deal if that happens, but it's going to happen because they have to have a deal. And as far as phone calls are concerned, Secretary of the Treasury and other people have been receiving many calls, not receiving, back and forth, many calls. China wants to make a deal, and if we can, we will make a deal. We'll see. Go ahead.
Mr. President, if I could ask you a little bit about your China strategy.
Yeah.
President Macron talked a little bit about instability and the worry in the markets and around the globe about instability. One of the things that comes from, as you talk to people...
You're talking about global economic instability?
Right.
I don't consider it instability,
but
but that's...
comes from is the back and forth and the changing statements from yourself, so that...
Sorry, it's the way I negotiate.
So my question is that a strategy? Is it a strategy to call President Xi an enemy one day and then say that relations are very good the next day, and then, you know, I mean, it's gone back
It's the way I
and forth
negotiate. It's done very well for me over the years, and it's doing even better for the country.
Could
I think,
you talk a little bit about
and I
why
do
it
think,
works
and I do think that, look, here's the story. I have people say, "Oh, just make a deal, make a deal." They don't have the guts, and they don't have the wisdom to know that you can't continue to go on where a country is taking 500 billion, not million, 500 billion with a B, out every single year. $500 billion. You just can't do that. Somebody had to do this. This should have been done by President Obama. It should have been done, and Biden, Sleepy Joe. It should have been done by other people. It should have been done by Bush. It should have been done by Clinton. Double Bush. It should have been done. I'm doing it. Let me tell you something else. North Korea should have been done a long time ago. I'm doing it. I'm doing a lot of things that I shouldn't have to be doing. Please. Go ahead, please.
Beth Rigby, Sky News. President Trump, you've met our new Prime Minister Boris Johnson yesterday.
Yes.
You said he was the right man for the job on Brexit.
I believe that.
Do you think Theresa May was the wrong woman? And do you think that Boris Johnson can actually get a deal with the EU before October the 31st?
Well, Theresa was unable to do the deal. I gave her my ideas as to doing the deal very early on, and you possibly know what they are, but I would have done that. She chose to do it her way, and that didn't work out so well. I think she's a very, very good person and a good woman, and I really believe that Boris Johnson will be a great prime minister. You know, we like each other, and we had a great 2.5 days. I've been waiting for him to be prime minister for about 6 years. I told him, what took you so long? I think he's going to be a great prime minister, and especially after spending a lot of intense time with him over the last couple of days. He's really he's very smart, he's very strong, and he's very enthusiastic. And you know what else? He loves your country. He really loves your country. That came out maybe more than anything else. Yeah, please.
Vicky Young, BBC News. President Trump, Boris Johnson is very keen on a trade deal with the USA. You sound keen on it too. Some of his critics, though, are worried that you're going to do over the UK in that deal to protect American
I love the
interests.
UK. I own great property in the UK. I love the UK. I have no idea how my property is doing because I don't care. But I own Turnberry, and I own in Aberdeen, and I own in Ireland, as you know, Doonbeg, and great stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I think he's going to just do a great job as prime minister. You know, it takes a lot. It's so many different elements to being a great prime minister. And you needed him. I just think his time is right. This is the right time for Boris. This is the right time for Boris. Yeah, please, go ahead. Go ahead, right here. Say who you're with, please.
Robert Peston from ITV. in the UK as well. You've obviously had a good few days with President Macron, who you appear to be doing business with, to use your favourite expression. After Brexit, who do you think will be your more important relationship? President Macron, France and the EU, or Boris Johnson, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom?
I think we're going to have just, look, France is a great nation. It's being run, a lot of things are happening. You know, it's not easy what he's doing. He's changing certain ways. It's a very hard thing to do. I won't get into it. I'm going to let him sell his ideas, but a lot of people don't disagree with his ideas. But it's a very hard thing to do. If you're a great citizen of France, you love your country, but you want to do the way you've been doing it for a long time. But maybe that's not working, and maybe they have to do what he has to do. I think he's going to do a fantastic job, but it's very tough for him. I know how tough it is for him. He's been having a hard time, and nobody would have an easy time. But I do believe he's doing the right thing. Boris is different. It's a different kind of a deal. Boris has to try and do something with Brexit. It's very tough. I deal with the EU. The EU that's a very, very strong group of people. They have their ideas, and they're not easy to deal with, I will tell you. We're very close to making a deal, by the way, with the EU. I have to say this. We made a great deal with Japan, and we're very close to maybe making a deal with the EU because they don't want tariffs. It's very simple. They don't want to tax cars. Mercedes-Benz, BMW, they don't need a 20% or a 25% tax. But we're very close. I think we're going to make a deal with the EU without having to go that route. I may have to go that route, but maybe not. We're going to have a deal, a really fair deal, but the EU is another one. We've been losing $180 billion a year for many years. That's a lot of money. How much can you take out of the piggy bank, right?
But which alliance will be more important, with the EU or with Britain?
Both. I don't want to say which. Look, I think we have been with, I guess it would start off by saying England, right? You know, I asked Boris, where's England? What's happening with England? They don't use it too much anymore. We talked about it. It was very interesting. But the United Kingdom is a great, incredible place. It's an incredible nation. And it's, you know, been one of our tremendous allies. And another one happens to be Australia. He was here also, Scott. He is fantastic. In fact, we're honoring him in Australia at the White House in a very short period of time. But I think that, excuse me? Will you visit Australia? At some point I will, yeah. At some point I will. Also Germany. Angela asked me to visit Germany. We're going to be doing that too. So I just think they're very different. And they're going to be going at it for a little while, but ultimately probably it works out. They may have to get out. They may not make a deal. The European Union is very tough to make deals with. Very, very tough. Just ask Theresa May.
Thank you, Mr. President. Zeke Miller with the Associated Press. I was hoping you could clarify. Last year, you left this summit in Canada, feuding with the summit host. This year, things seem to be a little bit different. You're talking about unity, had a hug with President Macron on the stage. What is different? And also, as President Macron said, he's passing you the baton now of leading this multilateral institution. You ran on the platform of America First. What is your now that you have a mandate for the international community, what are you going to do with it?
Well, we actually had a very good meeting. I had it out with one or two people where we disagreed in terms of concept, but we actually had a pretty good meeting last year. I would say that this was a big step above in terms of unity, in terms of agreement. We have really great agreement on a lot of very important subjects. But last year was good also. I mean, last year was good also. I think last year might have been a little bit underrated. You know, go ahead,
and
please.
In terms of the G7 presidency, what do you want to do with it? What's your agenda?
Oh, we're going to do something hopefully special. We're going to build on what we have now. We built on something really good. We're going to be going in with some great unity. We really did. If there was any word for this particular meeting of 7 very important countries, it was unity. I think most important of all, we got along great. We got along great. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm Qing Yichang with Shanghai Media Group. You just mentioned that Chinese Vice Premier Liu He said China is willing to resolve this issue through calm negotiations.
No, I didn't say it. He did.
Yes.
Yeah.
And will the U.S. negotiate in the same manner?
Yes.
And also, So the other issue, the
That
other question.
was an easy answer.
So the U.S. will negotiate in the same manner with
Absolutely.
Trump.
Great respect for China, great respect for the leadership of China. Absolutely.
And also the other question is that you say you definitely will invite Putin to join next year's summit.
I haven't said that, but I think that having President Putin in what was the G8, he was a member of the G8, and I heard he was a good member of the G8. Having him in, I think, is more of an advantage. I think it's a positive for the world. I think it's a positive for Russia. I think it's a big positive for Russia. And it's something the group is discussing. They are discussing it.
But just a few hours ago.
People feel very much like me, many people. What?
But just a few hours ago, Russian foreign ministers saying that it's not their foreign policy pursuit to return G8. What's your reaction?
Well, you know, we'll see. I know one thing. If they were invited back, I think they'd be there. If they weren't, that's okay too. I just think they'd be better inside than outside. I mean, as I said before, I really do. I think they'd be an asset. I think it would be a good thing. You know, some of the things, we were going in the room, and yesterday in particular, we were discussing 4 or 5 matters, and Russia was literally involved in all of those 4 or 5 matters. And a few of the people looked up and said, you know, why aren't they here talking to us about it? What are we going to do now? Go home? Take it easy for a day? Although I'm not doing that. I don't take it easy. But what are we're going to go home and start calling them at the end of the week and say, hey, how about this? Could have been in the room. We had numerous things that we were discussing, right? Numerous. We had a lot of things that we were discussing. And it would have been very easy if Russia was in the room. If he was in the room, we could have solved those things. Now they're just in limbo. But I have to say, with all of that, very little in limbo. But somebody will speak to him about some things, and frankly, they're not very complicated. But it would be easier if they were in the room.
Thank you so much.
Josh, go ahead. Josh.
Mr. President, there was a significant talk at the summit about climate change. I know in the past you've harbored some skepticism of science and climate change. What do you think the world should be doing about climate change, and do you still harbor that skepticism?
I feel that the United States has tremendous wealth. The wealth is under its feet. I've made that wealth come alive. We will soon be exporting. In fact, we're actually doing it now, exporting. But we are now the #1 energy producer in the world, and soon it will be by far, with a couple of pipelines that have not been able to get approved for many, many years. It'll have a huge impact. I was able to get ANWR in Alaska, could be the largest site in the world for oil and gas. I was able to get ANWR approved. Ronald Reagan wasn't able to do it. Nobody was able to do it. They've been trying to do it since before Ronald Reagan. I got it approved. We're the #1 energy producer in the world. Soon it will be by far the #1. It's tremendous wealth, and LNG is being sought after all over Europe and all over the world, and we have more of it than anybody else. And I'm not going to lose that wealth. I'm not going to lose it on dreams, on windmills, which, frankly, aren't working too well. I'm not going to lose it. So, Josh, in a nutshell, I want the cleanest water on earth. I want the cleanest air on earth. And that's what we're doing. And I'm an environmentalist. A lot of people don't understand that. I have done more environmental impact statements probably than anybody that's, I guess I can say definitely, because I've done many, many, many of them. More than anybody that's ever been president or vice president or anything even close to president. And I think I know more about the environment than most people. I want clean air, I want clean water, I want a wealthy country, I want a spectacular country with jobs, with pensions, with so many things, and that's what we're getting. So I want to be very careful. At the same time, you weren't called, at the same time, it's very important to me, we have to maintain this incredible place that we've all built. We've become a much richer country, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing, because that great wealth allows us to take care of people. We can take care of people that we couldn't have taken care of in the past because of the great wealth. We can't let that wealth be taken away. Clean air, clean water. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Climate change, Mr. President. You didn't answer the